Join us here on The Splash Live, co-owner of Frameable Faces and West Bloomfield resident, Michigan alum. We have Doug Cohen joining us on The Splash. Thanks for being here, Doug.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. How you doing?
Man, doing pretty good. We got a lot going on with football season in general in Michigan. I want to talk to you about a few things first and foremost. Jim Harbaugh coming back after these penalties and things of that nature. Let's just talk about that. How do you think Jim Harbaugh's return as honorary captain for the Fresno State game will impact the team in the fan season opener?
Well, I think it'll probably get everybody a little bit hyped. I think the home opener is always going to provide a little bit of hype anyway, just because it's the return of the season. But with a schedule that includes teams like Oregon and Texas and USC and Washington, you don't want to overlook a Fresno State because they play pretty good football at Fresno State. So I think when Jim Harbaugh returns as the guy who led us and was part of that national championship,
Right.
I think it'll get everybody pumped up and hyped, and I think he'll be welcomed back, as a conquering hero, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will have a lot of love for what he accomplished as the head coach last year and the last 3 years, especially.
Right. How can you not love that? Bringing us the national championship. But listen, I understand that. You can't take your foot off the gas of Fresno State. I'm old enough to remember Appalachian State. So I remember that.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about something real quick. These NCAA penalties against Harbaugh. What are your thoughts and how this might affect Michigan football's reputation and future recruiting efforts? I want you to try to be as non-biased and objective as possible.
Right. Right. Well, okay, so I honestly, I don't think it's going to impact our reputation or future recruiting that much.
Okay.
I honestly don't. I think a lot of people are pretty hip to the idea that the NCAA is not typically, they're not the arbiter of what is fair in most people's eyes anymore. And
Okay.
so whether you already hated Michigan or whether you love Michigan or whether you're kind of somewhere in the middle, even though there's not a lot of people in that middle, you either kind of love us or hate us, I
Correct.
think, because we're, the number one program of all time. But bias aside, I think when, Sharon Moore goes out and sits in front of a recruit and talks about everything that Michigan has to offer, as an institution, as a tradition, as a football program, when it comes to facilities, resources, all the things that Michigan brings to the table, that's really what matters when it comes to, our continued efforts towards excellence.
Right.
And I think that will resonate with people just like it always has. I really do not believe that these sanctions on a coach who is no longer here is really going to impact what we do going forward.
Exactly. That's
just
what
don't.
I'm saying. I agree with that. Might be my bias showing too a little bit, Doug, but I agree with you 100%. Join us right here on The Splash Live, co-owner of Frameable Faces, West Bloomfield resident, and Michigan alum Doug Cohen, just talking about Michigan football season, and these penalties with Jim Harbaugh. Just real quick, just going back to that real quick, as an alum of Michigan, I don't know if you engage with people from other universities and whatnot, but have you heard anything? What's their perspective on Michigan football, or Jim Harbaugh with these violations now?
I think it kind of depends on who you talk to. I think when you talk to people who are, I think put it this way, when I talk to people who are elsewhere, even then, a lot of them, because I have a connection with them, or if I have a connection with them, usually it traces back to Michigan. So, I don't talk to a lot of people, from Ohio or that never had any connection to Michigan
Right.
at all whatsoever.
Right,
If
right.
there's people that have kind of come through other places, like I have friends that are coaching all over the place and not at Michigan, and they kind of know the deal. And everybody who knows Jim Harbaugh knows that he's an upsetter. He'll upset the apple cart. He'll come in and push the envelope on a lot of things, and he doesn't care whose feathers he ruffles. I mean, he started doing that from the day he stepped on campus. If
Check
you
the
remember, with all
system.
those satellite recruiting camps that really got up people in a fury, especially. I mean, he caught the attention of some SEC coaches who were like, "Hey, you can't come down here into our territory and run satellite camps." the NCAA kind of didn't know what to do with that because it was kind of a gray area. He'll find the gray areas and he'll push it.
Yeah.
And I think people know that about him. And I think people know that the NCAA is kind of a joke in a lot of ways.
Yeah. A little subjective.
And if you remember also, Jim Harbaugh was also an advocate for players. He was a player advocate on a lot of topics that put the NCAA in not such a great light. And you got to wonder how much of that influenced how hard they went after him.
No, I know exactly what you mean, Doug. And trust me, I was thinking that too. We can go down a rabbit hole with that. But no, I 100% thought of that too. But us advocating for him, they'll say we're just being biased. But that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about a local resident. Grew up right here in West Bloomfield, Donovan Edwards. How does it feel to see Donovan Edwards, a West Bloomfield native, actually taking on a significant leadership role at Michigan?
It's great. It's great. And I was fortunate enough the year that they won the state championship, which was the COVID year, and they were only allowing 150 people at one point to come to the games. And I was able to go to most of those games and watch Donovan throughout his high school career. One of his teammates on that team was somebody who I considered a nephew, may he rest in peace, Caleb Kelly, who died by suicide. And that, ties into, I think, what we're also going to talk about a little bit with Donovan and mental health, which is really important to Donovan. And Donovan has struggled with it a little bit, and he's been vocal about that. So I think Donovan's journey has been, met with some challenges along the way, and I think he's acknowledged them, and I think he's taken them on. And to see him continue to see his continued growth, I had a chance to sit down and talk to him a couple weeks ago. I'm excited for Donovan, and I'm excited to see what he does as a senior, because people, I think, underestimate how important that journey from freshman to senior at Michigan, how important that is, because not everybody goes all 4 years. People transfer, people leave early. And when you are there for 4 full years, that growth and development, mentally, physically, as a teammate, as a leader, I think you'll see that pay off for Donovan. So I'm excited for Donovan.
That's a great, solid point too, man, because you see a lot of transfers, transfer portal news all season long, off season, whatever the case may be. And that means he's sticking to the system, sticking to a system that works too. So obviously, that speaks volumes. Real quick, what would be your solid advice for him to kind of embrace and take on this last season at Michigan as he continues?
Well, I think to enjoy every moment, for starters, just to have fun. And I think Donovan, if you watch Donovan and you pay attention to kind of the way he carries himself and his demeanor, he's a guy who does embrace and have, embrace the moment and have fun. He, on the surface, outwardly, he's an exuberant guy.
Right.
And so I would say don't forget that, and don't let any of the pressure of being the defending national championship, of being the defending national champions, of being, the guy, so to speak, the number one back in that room. Don't let any of those things change kind of who you are at the core, because it's served you well, and continue to enjoy every moment, because you only get one senior year, man. And and this is the time to really embrace and enjoy, I think, being a Michigan Wolverine and playing in front of 110,000 people. That would be my advice.
That big house energy, man, soak it in, man. Man, you don't get to live that life too often, man. But, okay, so before we go, I do want to speak on an organization you're part of, the Football Alumni of Michigan, also known as FAM. That organization, which I believe supports and engages with former players. Now, after his senior year, he'll be an alumni of Michigan, also continuously move on. How do you feel like your organization impacts the broader Michigan football community?
So we're doing a lot of great things right now, and it's really exciting. That's actually One Team, One Legacy. That's our motto. That's our kind of our tagline, that we tie everything together for everybody who's ever worn the winged helmet. And that we need to support guys who have worn the winged helmet and people that have been part of the program, because, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit here, but not only does the 4 years that you play at Michigan represent a lot of growth, it represents a lot of challenges. I mean, going through football at that level is kind of, it's like going through a meat grinder. Not everybody comes out of it completely in one piece, physically or mentally. Some guys, they come out of a small town somewhere in high school, and suddenly they're thrust into this big limelight with all these crazy expectations. And then after football's done, which doesn't take long because football doesn't last that long for most people, all of a sudden it's all gone. And you may come out of it physically a little bit changed. I mean, we all know the effects of CTE, concussions, and that can impact guys' mental health. So there are former players out there who brought a lot of people a lot of joy and a lot of thrills in that stadium who are now struggling, as a result of what they gave to the program and of their bodies, of their minds. And so we do a lot of things to help former players, and we're a 501c3. So we do a lot of charitable stuff with some other organizations like Veterans of the Game. And now, and I know I don't want to go on too long, but now we also have a 24/7 toll-free concierge helpline for former players called Wolverine Hope, where if someone's in crisis or they're in mental health crisis or they have some kind of problem, they can call that number 24/7 and get help.
Good.
And so we're raising money to support that program and a lot of other initiatives. And in terms of how it impacts the whole community for Michigan football, it's a great way to tie together this legacy that we all have who've played, and it's a good recruiting tool.
Right.
Because if you come to Michigan and play football in Michigan, you're going to be part of this family, and you're going to have support after you leave. So I think it's really important.
And I'm glad you spoke on that on a collegiate level, how we support alumni, but just us supporting Donovan Edwards and other very successful alumni that leave our West Bloomfield School District. We love and support that. Looking forward to a great season for him. Looking forward to a great season for Michigan football. And we want to thank you again for joining us and giving us your time. Once again, co-owner of Frameable Faces, West Bloomfield resident, and Michigan alum, Doug Cohen. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thanks, Kevin.